Hey, good morning, everyone. Great to be with you today. Here I am in my reading room again, aka a closet. Um, and just great to just spend this time with you every day to read God's Word. It is July the 1st. It's incredible. We're starting up the second half of 2026. I hope that you have just enjoyed reading through God's Word now for 6 solid months. Congratulations! That's incredible, and just want to encourage you. Let's make this next 6 months just as good as the first, if not better, and let's make our way through the rest of the Bible. So we're halfway through. Congratulations, halfway through the Bible. And so today we jump back in and we are picking up the story of King Hezekiah, who has been a good king. In fact, it's pretty incredible because he had really a poor example in a father. His dad actually was, it was pretty sad. His dad actually sacrificed Hezekiah's brother to the pagan gods in the fire, it says. And but when you read about Hezekiah, it says that he followed in the footsteps of his father, King David. And so he found an example, even though he didn't have an example in his own dad. He followed an example of generations before in his lineage of somebody who was faithful to God, loved God, and Hezekiah made his heart's desire to follow God. And so it's a pretty incredible story about King Hezekiah. And we're picking it up now, Second Chronicles chapter 29, starting at verse 3. In the very first month of the year, first year of his reign, Hezekiah reopened the doors of the temple of the Lord and repaired them. And he summoned the priests and Levites to meet him at the courtyard east of the temple. And he said to them, "Listen to me, you Levites, purify yourselves and purify the temple of the Lord, the God of your ancestors. Remove all the defiled things from the sanctuary." His dad had brought in defiled things into the sanctuary for the use of pagan worship. And Hezekiah is like, no, we're opening up the temple, we're removing those things, and we're going to return to God. It's incredible. He says, "Our ancestors were unfaithful and did what was evil in the sight of the Lord our God. They abandoned the Lord in his dwelling place. They turned their backs on him. They also shut the doors to the temple's entry room, and they snuffed out the lamps. They stopped burning incense and presenting burnt offerings at the sanctuary of the God of Israel. That is why the Lord's anger has fallen upon Judah and Jerusalem. He has made them an object of dread, horror, and ridicule, as you can see with your own eyes. Because of this, our fathers have been killed in battle, and our sons and daughters and wives have been captured. But now I will make a covenant with the Lord, the God of Israel, so that his fierce anger will turn away from us. My sons, do not neglect your duties any longer." That's such a great statement from King Hezekiah. My sons, do not neglect your duties any longer. The Lord has chosen you to stand in his presence, to minister to him, and to lead the people in worship and present offerings to him. And then these Levites got right to work. Listen, sometimes it takes just one person to stand up and to say, you know what, we can do better. Come on, let's do better. Let's serve God right. Let's serve God faithfully. That person was Hezekiah. And the Levites responded. All they needed was one person to call them to something higher, something greater. We can be that for people. We can be the people who call people to a higher place. You've got to have a higher vision, right, for your life, for serving God. And so we get to be that. We get to be that for our children, get to be that even for our friends, not in a judgmental way, but just saying, hey, you know what? God's got something better. He created you for more, right? That's what he's saying to the Levites. Listen, you were created. You were given this incredible duty, this incredible job. Now do it. And they responded. The Levites got right to work. From the clan of Kohath, Mahath son of Amasai, and Joel son of Azariah. From the clan of Merari, Kish son of Abdi, and Azariah the son of Jehaliel. From the clan of Gershon, Joah the son of Zimmah, and Eden son of Joah. From the family of Elizaphan, Shimri and Jael. From the family of Asaph, Zechariah and Mattaniah. From the family of Heman, Jehiel and Shimi. From the family of Jeduthun, Shemaiah and Uzziel. These men called together their fellow Levites, and they all purified themselves. So what's cool? One person calls these men up to a higher place. Those men, in turn, call others up to a higher place. See, that's what happens. Discipleship, the right kind of leadership. They all purified themselves. Then they began to cleanse the temple of the Lord, just as the king had commanded. They were careful to follow all the Lord's instructions in their work. The priests went into the sanctuary of the temple of the Lord to cleanse it, and they took out to the temple courtyard all the defiled things they found. And from there, the Levites carted it all out to the Kidron Valley. They began the work early in spring, on the first day of the new year, and in 8 days, they had reached the entry room of the Lord's temple. Just stop here for a minute. You realize it took them 8 days, all of these men working all day long, 8 full days to finally get to the entrance. That goes to show you how much neglect had happened with the temple. They weren't using it. Worshiping God was not a thing anymore. It says, then they purified the temple of the Lord itself, which took another 8 days. So the entire task was completed in 16 days. All right, 2 Chronicles 29:18. Then the Levites went to King Hezekiah and gave him this report. We have cleansed the entire temple of the Lord, the altar of burnt offering with all its utensils, and the table of the bread of the presence with all its utensils. We have also recovered all the items discarded by King Ahaz when he was unfaithful and closed the temple. They are now in front of the altar of the Lord, purified and ready for use. Well, early the next morning, King Hezekiah gathered the city officials and went to the temple of the Lord. And they brought 7 bulls, 7 rams, and 7 male lambs as a burnt offering, together with 7 male goats as a sin offering for the kingdom, for the temple, and for Judah. The king commanded the priests, who were descendants of Aaron, to sacrifice the animals on the altar of the Lord. So they killed the bulls, and priests took the blood and sprinkled it on the altar. And next they killed the rams and sprinkled their blood on the altar. And finally they did the same with the male lambs. The male goats for the sin offering were then brought before the king, an assembly of people, who laid their hands on them. The priests then killed the goats as a sin offering and sprinkled their blood on the altar to make atonement for the sins of all Israel. The king had specifically commanded that this burnt offering and sin offering should be made for all Israel. And then King Hezekiah then stationed the Levites at the temple of the Lord with cymbals and lyres and harps, and he obeyed all the commands that the Lord had given to King David through Gad, the king's seer, and the prophet Nathan. The Levites then took their positions around the temple with the instruments of David, and the priests took their positions with the trumpets. And then Hezekiah ordered that the burnt offering be placed on the altar. As the burnt offering was presented, songs of praise to the Lord were begun, accompanied by the trumpets and the other instruments of David, the former king of Israel. The entire assembly worshiped the Lord as the singers sang and the trumpets blew until all the burnt offerings were finished. And then the king and everyone with him bowed down in worship. And King Hezekiah and the officials ordered the Levites to praise the Lord with the psalms written by David and by Asaph the seer. So they offered joyous praise and bowed down in worship. And then King Hezekiah declared, Now that you have consecrated yourselves to the Lord, bring your sacrifices and thanksgiving offerings to the temple of the Lord. So the people brought their sacrifices and thanksgiving offerings, and all whose hearts were willing brought burnt offerings too. And the people brought to the Lord 70 bulls, 100 rams, and 200 male lambs for burnt offerings. And they also brought 600 cattle and 3,000 sheep and goats as sacred offerings. But there were too few priests to prepare all the burnt offerings. So their relatives, the Levites, helped them until the work was finished and more priests had been purified. For the Levites had been more conscientious about purifying themselves than the priests had been. There was an abundance of burnt offerings, along with the usual liquid offerings, and a great deal of fat from the many peace offerings. So the temple of the Lord was restored to service. And Hezekiah and all the people rejoiced because of what God had done for the people, for everything had been accomplished so quickly. I love that statement. Everything had been accomplished so quickly. Why were things accomplished so quickly? It's because people made it a priority, right? They didn't make it a priority. They made it a priority. They didn't make it a study item. They didn't procrastinate and say, we'll get around to it. Maybe we'll do it every other weekend for the next, couple hours for the next, 8 weeks. No, they saw it was a priority, and they put the priority in place, and they did the work. A lot more can be done in our lives if we just make God a priority. A lot can be done for God. Things that can happen a lot more quickly than what we realize. All right, 2 Chronicles 30. Now King Hezekiah now sent word to all Israel and Judah, and he wrote letters of invitation to the people of Ephraim and Manasseh. He asked everyone to come to the temple of the Lord at Jerusalem to celebrate the Passover of the Lord, the God of Israel. The king and his officials and all the community of Jerusalem decided to celebrate Passover a month later than usual. They were unable to celebrate it at the prescribed time because not enough priests could be purified by then, and the people had not yet assembled at Jerusalem. This plan for keeping the Passover seemed right to the king and all the people, so they sent a proclamation throughout all Israel, from Beersheba in the south to Dan in the north, inviting everyone to come to Jerusalem to celebrate the Passover of the Lord, the God of Israel. The people had not been celebrating it in great numbers as required in the law. And at the king's command, runners were sent throughout Israel and Judah, and they carried letters that said, O people of Israel, return to the Lord, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, so that he will return to the few of us who have survived the conquest of the Assyrian kings. Do not be like your ancestors and relatives who abandoned the Lord, the God of their ancestors, and became an object of derision, as you yourselves can see. Do not be stubborn, as they were, but submit yourselves to the Lord. Come to his temple, which he has set apart as holy forever. Worship the Lord your God, so that his fierce anger will turn away from you. For if you return to the Lord, your relatives and your children will be treated mercifully by their captors, and they will be able to return to this land. For the Lord your God is gracious and merciful. If you return to him, he will not continue to turn his face from you. 2 Chronicles 30, verse 10. And the runners went from town to town throughout Ephraim and Manasseh, and as far as the territory of Zebulun. But most of the people just laughed at the runners and made fun of them. However, some people from Asher, Manasseh, and Zebulun humbled themselves and went to Jerusalem. At the same time, God's hand was on the people in the land of Judah, giving them all one heart to obey the orders of the king and his officials who were following the word of the Lord. So a huge crowd assembled at Jerusalem in mid-spring to celebrate the festival of unleavened bread. They set to work and removed the pagan altars from Jerusalem. They took away all the incense altars and threw them into the Kidron Valley. On the 14th day of the second month, 1 month later than usual, the people slaughtered the Passover lamb. This shamed the priests and Levites, so they purified themselves and brought burnt offerings to the temple of the Lord. Then they took their places at the temple, as prescribed in the law of Moses, the man of God. The Levites brought the sacrificial blood to the priests, who then sprinkled it on the altar. So it's interesting because the role of the Levites, they were supposed to be the ones that slaughtered the Passover lamb. It was their duty. It was their responsibility. But they hadn't consecrated themselves. They hadn't purified themselves. And so the people ended up having to do it themselves. So that's what happens when leaders abdicate responsibility. The people, other people, have to step in and do what should have been done by the leaders. And they were shamed into finally realizing, man, we missed this opportunity. We missed the boat. And so that's an interesting moment right there. Since many of the people who had not purified themselves, I already stated that, sorry. Most of those who came from Ephraim, Manasseh, Issachar, and Zebulun had not purified themselves, but King Hezekiah prayed for them, and they were allowed to eat the Passover meal anyway, even though this was contrary to the requirements of the law. For Hezekiah said, "May the Lord, who is good, pardon those who decide to follow the Lord, the God of their ancestors, even though they are not properly cleansed for the ceremony." And the Lord listened to Hezekiah's prayer and healed the people. So the people of Israel who were present in Jerusalem joyously celebrated the festival of unleavened bread for 7 days. And each day the Levites and priests sang to the Lord, accompanied by loud instruments. Hezekiah encouraged all the Levites regarding the skill they displayed as they served the Lord. The celebration continued for 7 days. Peace offerings were sacrificed, and the people gave thanks to the Lord, the God of their ancestors. And the entire assembly then decided to continue the festival another 7 days. So they celebrated joyfully for another week. King Hezekiah gave the people 1,000 bulls and 7,000 sheep and goats for offerings, and the officials donated 1,000 bulls and 10,000 sheep and goats. And meanwhile, many more priests purified themselves. Many more priests were getting things right, doing what they were supposed to do. And the entire assembly of Judah rejoiced, including the priests, the Levites, and all who came from the land of Israel, the foreigners who came to the festival, and all those who lived in Judah. There was great joy in the city, for Jerusalem had not seen a celebration like this one since the days of Solomon, King David's son. Then the priests and Levites stood and blessed the people, and God heard their prayer from his holy dwelling in heaven. Just as incredible. Man, this is what God is doing right here through Hezekiah and now the priests and the Levites and the people, and they're joining together, and they come together for a whole week, right? A whole week to celebrate. And then they finish that week and they do it again. A whole nother week. They're like, we want more. Let's stay in this moment with God. And they did it again. It's incredible. Now look at what happened. 2 Chronicles 31. And when the festival ended, the Israelites who attended went to all the towns of Judah, Benjamin, Ephraim, and Manasseh, and they smashed all the sacred pillars, and they cut down the Asherah poles. And they removed the pagan shrines and altars. And after this, the Israelites returned to their own towns and homes. And Hezekiah then organized the priests and Levites into divisions to offer the burnt offerings and peace offerings, and to worship and give thanks and praise to the Lord at the gates of the temple. And the king also made a personal contribution of animals for the daily morning and evening burnt offerings, the weekly Sabbath festivals, the monthly new moon festivals, and the annual festivals as prescribed in the law of the Lord. And in addition, he required the people in Jerusalem to bring a portion of their goods to the priests and Levites so they could devote themselves fully to the law of the Lord. I'm going to just stop here for a moment. It's amazing because King Hezekiah went first. He went first. He was willing to go first, to be the first one, to make the offerings, to make the sacrifices, and then the people followed. And when the people of Israel heard these requirements, they responded generously by bringing the first share of their grain, the new wine, olive oil, honey, and all the produce of their fields. They brought a large quantity, a tithe of all they produced. The people who had moved to Judah from Israel and the people of Judah themselves brought in the tithes of their cattle, sheep, and goats, and a tithe of the things that had been dedicated to the Lord their God, and they piled them up in great heaps. They began piling them up in late spring, and the heaps continued to grow until early autumn. When Hezekiah and his officials came and saw these huge piles, they thanked the Lord and his people, Israel. And so out of a response of everything that's happening, they begin tithing, right? They begin putting God first and saying, you get the first fruits of our lives, of our gain, the first fruits of our crops, and the first fruits of the olive oil, and just everything, Lord. We want to put you first. So that's what happens. That flows out of authentic worship of God. Where did all this come from? Hezekiah asked the priests and the Levites. And Azariah, the high priest from the family of Zadok, replied, since the people began bringing their gifts to the Lord's temple, we have had enough to eat and plenty to spare. The Lord has blessed his people, and all this is left over. And Hezekiah ordered that storerooms be prepared in the temple of the Lord. When this was done, the people faithfully brought all the gifts and tithes and other items dedicated for use in the temple. Conaniah, the Levite, was put in charge, assisted by his brother Shimei. The supervisors under them were Jehiel, Isaiah, Nahath, Asahel, Jeremoth, Jozabad, Eliel, Ismachiah, Mahath, and Benaiah. These appointments were made by King Hezekiah and Azariah, the chief official in the temple of the Lord. Now Korah, the son of Imnah, the Levite, who was the gatekeeper at the east gate, was put in charge of distributing the voluntary offerings given to the Lord, the gifts and the things that had been dedicated to the Lord. His faithful assistants were Eden, Miniam, Jeshua, Shemaiah, Amariah, and Shechaniah. They distributed the gifts among the families of priests in their towns by their divisions, dividing the gifts fairly among old and young alike. They distributed the gifts to all males 33 years old or older, regardless of their place in the genealogical records. The distribution went to all who would come to the Lord's temple to perform their daily duties according to their divisions. They distributed gifts to the priests who were listed by their families in the genealogical records, and to the Levites 20 years old or older who were listed according to their jobs and their divisions. Food allotments were also given to the families of all those listed in the genealogical records, including their little babies, wives, sons, and daughters, for they had all been faithful in purifying themselves. As for the priests and the descendants of Aaron, who were living in the open villages around the towns, men were appointed by name to distribute portions to every male among the priests and to all the Levites listed in the genealogical records. And in this way, King Hezekiah handled the distribution throughout all Judah, doing what was pleasing and good in the sight of the Lord his God. And in all that he did in the service of the temple of God and in his efforts to follow God's laws and commands, Hezekiah sought his God wholeheartedly, and as a result, he was very successful. And not a lot of comments today. I made plenty of commentary along the way, but I would say this: what a great thing to have written about you, King Hezekiah. What a great thing. Hezekiah sought his God wholeheartedly. I hope that you and I, that we can have that written about us. Now here's the thing: if you want it written about you, that put your name in there. Joanne sought her God wholeheartedly. Pam sought her God wholeheartedly. Daryl sought his God wholeheartedly. Bob sought his God wholeheartedly. Kimberly sought her God wholeheartedly. You can put your name in there, and this is the way that that gets written out in our lives and actualized is for us to look at our lives and say, okay, Lord, I really want to, I want to serve you. I want to seek you with all my heart. And so, God, I'm going to start making that the priority in my life. I'm going to sit down and I'm going to start calculating what does it look like for me to really, seek you wholeheartedly. What do I need to begin to adjust? What do I need to do to begin to change those things? We're not talking in a legalistic sense. We're talking about a disciplined sense. The discipline of seeking God, of saying, I'm gonna seek Him. I'm gonna stay in the Word every day for the next 6 months. Right? I'm gonna finish. I'm gonna read the entire Bible. I'm gonna finish this thing out. Why? Because I want to seek God. I want to know Him better. I want His heart. I want His Word to be hidden in my heart. I want to become more like Him. And so I'm going to seek Him. And then what we do is we begin to be disciplined and intentional about making sure that we begin to apply the things that we're reading and making sure that we are, that we're clearing the way, right? They went into the temple and they had to clear the way, right, for worship to happen. What do we have to do? We got to clear the way. If we say we want to be wholehearted in our worship, we want that to be written about us, right? It means we got to clear the way. Sometimes that means we got to say no to other things so we can say yes to God, right? Clear the things out of our calendar, some of the things, and just saying, maybe it's shutting off the TV, maybe it's shutting the TV off so that we can spend some time in prayer every day instead of sitting in front of the television and being inundated with all this negativity. Maybe it's maybe it's beginning to say, God, I need to realign my heart because I'm really not worshiping you with all of my heart, like they did in the Israelites as they were starting to to really start worshiping you. Man, they were joyful about it. And so they wanted to give back to you, God. And so they gave back so much that the temple was full. And they gave a tenth of their their olive oil. And they gave a tenth of their crops. And they gave a tenth of their income. And they just wanted to give back to God. Why? Because they knew what it was like to not be in worship. They knew what it was like to have the temple door shut and to not have that as a part of their life. They knew this wasn't a legalistic thing where they were like, hey, everybody's got, no, they really wanted to, because they wanted to. The temple was full. So maybe that's part of it. Maybe it's saying, you know what, I really want to start giving to God joyfully. Maybe it's also cleansing. Maybe a part of it's cleansing your heart and your life. Maybe it's saying, there might be some things that are in my life that just need to go away. Where I'm delighting in evil, where I'm allowing myself to be entertained by things that, right, quite honestly, I mean, would God really want us to watch it? Some of the movies we watch, listen to some of the stuff that we listen to, would God really want us to? I mean, that's not legalistic. That's just asking ourselves, where's my heart? What am I filling up my life with? When we begin to do that and realign our lives, and there's so many things, that we could do. Maybe it's saying, you know what, I want to start, being like Hezekiah did, who called other people up to a higher level, and then they turned around, called other people up to a higher level, and then those people ended up influencing the entire city. And then what's cool is that the people in Judah went to Israel. They were a divided nation. Northern kingdom, southern kingdom. The southern kingdom in that moment, do you realize, influenced some of the people? Not all of them. Some of them laughed at them, but there were some of the Israelites that actually trekked down into Jerusalem and got their lives right with God. Why? Because this group of people took it upon themselves to influence this group of people, to witness, to evangelize others, bring them in, to say, you know what, there's something better, there's something more, and you can experience it too. And so just an incredible thing for us to really consider, so that we make sure that at the end of days that what's written about us is that, you know what, Wayne wholeheartedly, I love that, sought his God wholeheartedly. That's my prayer. I hope it is to yours too. All right, well, God bless you. It's been great spending time with you. Here we go, starting up a new year. God bless you. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Have a great day.